Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, Siman Kuf Yud, Siman 110, Halacha Hey, the fifth halacha. Okay, we are now also discussing basically the setup of how the dough and the flour and water come together to make dough. And practically speaking, as it was done, as it's still done in bakeries, there's a bit of an assembly line process. There's one person who is measuring out the water for the matzah, and there's another person measuring out the flour, and they are totally removed from each other and also totally removed from the assembly line. And the basic concern here is that somehow or another flour we don't want flour getting into our water and beginning to rise before its time. We also don't want water getting into our flour so that it can begin to rise. So those two are kept in, for lack of a better term, a sterile environment. Of course, it's not sterile, but they're sealed off from each other. And then the first time the water and the flour come into contact, they come into contact where it is needed, and it is needed immediately. So they come together, and then in very rapid succession, it is kneaded, and then it is rolled, and then it's passed down the line until it has the perfect thickness and the perfect shape, and then it is very quickly taken to be baked in the oven, which once it's in the oven, it just takes a few seconds to bake, because at least for Ashkenazi matzah, the matzahs are very thin. Okay, so we have now we're describing that process at the time immediately before this process begins. Okay, so let's begin. Lo yidchoch es hakemach l'soch hamida. We do not press or stuff the flour into the midah, the measuring vessel. Why? Ki yesh lachush shelo yeh nilosh yafe. Because we're concerned that if the flour is stuffed in tight, that it's going to become compacted, and somehow or another, yes, look, there's a concern shelo yeh nilosh yafe, that it won't be kneaded properly. Yeah, if it's not soft and pliable, if it's all stuffed together, then it might pebble up as when water is added to it, and we might not be able to knead it properly. And as such, v'yishar b'soch hamatzah, and if that's the case, then we'll just pass it down the line, and there'll be little pockets of dry flour, little bubbles of flour. Yishar b'soch hamatzah mashu kemach. There'll be a little bit of flour left unwetted and just still dry. We've seen that anybody that's baked with kids and had them, make brownies or whatnot, we know that they don't always make the batter properly. So sometimes you'll see in a cake, you'll see a bubble in which there's flour still and it's intact, and matzah or any baked product is no different. And we are concerned about that because that flour inside that pocket, that bubble, is still dry, and so as soon as it comes in contact with water, it'll start becoming chametz. So that's the concern. So, and this is exactly what it says. When this matzah afterwards comes, when it comes betafshil, in contact with a tafshil, some sort of food that has a liquid to it, yischametz, it will become chametz. And this really is the origin of the custom that some people have to not eat what they call gebrots, or crumbs. So some people will, I think most communities will gleefully break their matzah into their chicken soup and eat their matzah that way. Make matzah balls. Other communities, I myself am part of such a community we do not put our matzah on anything wet for fear that there is going to be one of these bubbles of dry flour in the matzah, and that it will become wet and become chametz somehow without us knowing. Now, again, this is probably overkill, and I think that by the fact that very few Jews are terribly concerned about that, to not, to keep matzah separate from liquid stuffs. Most Jews are not concerned about that, but there are again communities who are concerned. The custom is they say we don't do gebrocks. Gebrocks would be when you take crumbs of matzah and put it with water and liquids. So there are communities who do not eat what they call gebrocks. Now, gebrocks is Yiddish, which literally means the broken pieces, the crumbs. So typically in the Hasidic communities, we do not do that, but in non-Hasidic communities, it's really usually not a big deal. There are families who will have a custom not to do it here and there, but by and large, most people are not strict to stay away from this. But certainly when we're preparing the dough, we should, everybody agrees that we should do our best to avoid those bubbles being in there. And if you have a crew making matzah that really knows what they're doing, then there's really no concern. Okay, fine. Let's get a little bit further into this halacha. Gam also yi zaharu. Also, they should be warned to not place the flour samach lamayim, next to the water. And like I said, we shouldn't have the bag of flour that we're scooping out of next to the vessel of water. Why? What's the problem? What we're concerned with is that it shouldn't fall from the dust of the flour into the water. Yeah, and then that would start the chametz process. So we're concerned about that. Fine. In many places, the water is not just in an open vessel; it's in a closed vessel. As one step more strict on that. Fine. V'kein, and also hamoded esachemach, the one who measures out the flour. He's the fellow with the measuring cup, measures out the flour. Lo yiskarev el ha'isa. He should not come near the dough. He should not come to the production line. Or el hamaim, or to the water. So, like I said, the guy who's measuring out the water, he is in one little cubicle. He's sort of separated off. And the guy who is pulling the dough, measuring the dough out, the flour, he is in a cubicle. He's in his own little compartment. And then the water and the flour are carried separately to the production line. And then from there, the the dough is mixed and made very quickly. But the people who are dealing with dry flour or with water, neither one of them come near the production or near each other. Fine. V'tov, l'zahar shalol haniach asayad al chemach shalol l'tzarech. V'tov, and it's also good, l'zahar, to be careful, shalol haniach, to not place asayad, the hand, al chemach, on the flour, shalol l'tzarech, not for no need, needlessly. Why? Because hayad machmemes katsas, because the hand is going to warm the flour a little bit. And again, because our body temperature is nearly 100 degrees, so by touching the flour, we will raise the temperature of the flour a little bit, potentially. So again, we're concerned that everything should be as cold as possible, even to the point of trying not to handle the dough or handle the flour or the water with our hands. We want everything to be separate and be as cold as is possible. And we also want to take pains that we can't cross-contaminate, so to speak. We can't get our dry products and our wet product, our dry ingredient and our wet ingredient, water and flour. We can't have them mixed before we are in control of the situation. We can't have any sort of surreptitious mixing that we're not aware of, or else the chametz process might begin before we really even realize what's happened, if we realize at all. So again, we are being overly strict because of the strictness of the prohibition for consuming chametz. As such, we try to act accordingly. Okay, I will see you with the next halacha. Kol tuv, hatzlacha rabba. Keep learning.